mysterious inscription on ancient Sphinx is deciphered, revealing unusual message. And, okay, I was like, all right, well, we can work with this. So let's see what's going on with this. And hope everybody's doing well tonight. That's where we start tonight with this this weird idea of a Sphinx. But we'll get into what it means and all the rest. But as usual, you guys know me. There's no truth to be found here. I want to stress that tonight. Incredibly important here that not just with this show, but with all the shows, that there's no truth here. I'm not an archaeologist or an anthropologist. I'm not anything. I'm just me. And I'm no expert in anything, barely even an expert in being myself. And so if you're going to run off and tell your history teacher to watch this, they're going to be highly disappointed. So this is not based in that. It's more the speculative theory, and that's really what we do. I call it drinking the maybe juice, of course, which is a bad paraphrase or a bad branded the paraphrase from Aristotle. It is the mark of an educated mind to consider a thought without accepting it. But that's that. So as usual, too, we're doing this to include you if you want to be part of the show tonight. 702-957-1037. You can click the Discord link at troubleminds.org. We'll put you on the show. All right. Simple as that. What's up? Hope everybody's well. Click the things. I think everything's fine. Are we working? Is everything working? All right. Okay. So let me read a little bit of this. And this is what kind of got me thinking, as usual, right? All I need is a little idea. And then suddenly my imagination just goes boom. And yeah, here we go. So this mysterious inscription, right? A message edge. Hold on. Get into show mode, Mike. Get it together. A message etched into an ancient Sphinx has proven to be, well, Sphinx-like. The mysterious inscription has long been an enigma, puzzling scholars for over a century. But now it's finally been deciphered, revealing a brief but unusual poem. According to a study published December 30th in the journal Mediterranean Archaeology and Archaeometry, I guess how you say that, yep. Dating to the 3rd century, the bronze Sphinx statue originated from Dacia, a Roman province that largely corresponds to modern-day Romania. Taking the form of a winged lion, the Sphinx was perceived by the original creators and users of the artifact as a representation of a mythical deity that they honored and worshipped, said Peter Revesz, a study author and professor at the University of Nebraska. After being discovered in the 19th century, the statue was stolen from a European count sometime around 1848. So they don't actually have the item itself. It was stolen back in 1848, this carving of this Sphinx. But the wild part is they do have paintings, pictures, these things of it, and which included an inscription. And as you can see in the actual drawing of this, there's a weird little inscription on the bottom, and it seems to be, I don't know, I'm not, I have no esoteric knowledge, I don't know, but let's call it magic script for the sake of this story. And what I mean by that is they weren't able to decipher what this actually was for a very long time. It's been 100 years, and they're like, well, what the hell is this? And it turns out that it's not quite as complicated as they thought. And check this out. This is what it was. So let's see. While the item itself was never recovered, as I said, a detailed drawing of the Sphinx remained. In the drawing, the inscription, composed of a handful of characters, can be seen on the base of the statue. For decades, scholars examined the drawing, attempting to decode the inscription. However, they were unsuccessful, perhaps because, in an unusual break from ancient norms, it reads from right to left. The characters may seem mysterious at first. In any case, they flipped it, and they were able to realize it was not just reading from right to left, which is unusual, but the script was also flipped. So it was sort of that, Da Vinci, they used to write backwards, okay? They say he could write forwards and backwards with both hands, even. And so how true that is, who really knows it? But there is some evidence that he was able to do this. And so they suggest as part of it that Leonardo da Vinci, and again, this is from... where are these sources from? From the Da Vinci Code. There you go. We'll call it from a fictional source just because I can't remember the actual source, but he got it from there because it's historical fiction. Anyway, so Dan Brown wrote about this, and the Da Vinci Code is where I first heard of it. I did look into it a ways back because I was curious about the actual writing backwards thing. And it turns out Da Vinci, there is some evidence to suggest he did do this to encode things, because most normal people would see regular written script backwards and would not think anything of it. They would think it looked like gibberish. But of course, when you know exactly what it is and how to decipher it, you put it in the mirror, of course, or at least you train yourself to just read it backwards and upside down or whatever it is. The mirror image, then it becomes sort of a secret code. Okay, well that's exactly what this is. This is what this the drawing of this statue that was disappeared in 1848 and stolen from this count. They were actually able to decipher this because it was sort of written in a Da Vinci-esque script. Now check this out. Since it's super short, you can see there's just some letters there. It's not anything massively profound, right? Because it's such a tiny little inscription. So it can't be, I don't know, like the Magna Carta or something, right? It just can't be. It's just so short. But they decoded it, and this is what it says. When they translated it to English, it says "lo," like L-O, not L-O-W, like the days of yore. Lo, yes, lo, behold, worship. Here is the Holy Lion. And there you go. And so as far as, let's say, poignant things in a super short script, that right there is pretty wild. I was like, well, damn, okay, that's better than I thought it would be, right? And so, okay, so there's that, all right? And this is where this begins, because it got me thinking in a lot of directions, because, of course, the idea of the Sphinx goes back centuries, many, many centuries, including, let's say, even further back than, let's say, ancient Egypt, as they say, because the Sphinx itself, as many of you know, was buried to its neck and even up to its eyeballs in desert storms forever, actual desert storms, not the military conflict in Iraq back in the whatever years that was. But so it was actually buried for the most part. And there's these old images. I'll see if I can pull them up and put them on the stream as we go tonight. But so they had to basically excavate this Sphinx, like kind of recover it from the desert, because the desert was trying to bury it forever, which again, those three ideas made me wonder about a lot of things. And so I'm reading the rest of this article. It goes down a little bit, and they talk about this. The decoded poem is noteworthy because, quote, the Sphinx cult was not part of the mainstream ancient Roman mythology, which features the Roman gods and goddesses that many people today are familiar with. And I was like, wait, there was a Sphinx cult? Like, wow, that's pretty cool, right? All right, okay, cool. All right, now we got something to work with, okay? And this is all, 45 minutes ago or whatever, because like I said, got home late, all the rest. But anyway, all right, so I got some questions for you as we start here. What time is it? I don't even know what time it is. Oh my goodness, no radio clock up. Mike's a disaster tonight. Sometimes you just got to be a disaster, you know what I mean? Just go with it. Here we go. There you go, in case you guys want to... there we go. We'll watch the radio clock together. All right. So that's the deal. That's what's on my mind tonight. As we begin with these, the Sphinx, or not just a Sphinx, the idea of a cult of the Sphinx itself. Now, interestingly, I did look it up, and there is a cult of the Sphinx that they know a little bit about, and it's not a ton. It's one of those sort of steeped in mysterious history sort of situations. That's it just is what it is. It's very scant information, but it got me wondering, because many of you know that if you've been following any of these sort of Graham Hancock style of archaeology and that type of thing, you'll remember or recognize that there's some actual contention amongst, let's say, alternative scholars that suggests that the Sphinx itself and the Giza Plateau is quite a bit older than suggested. Not back to 2500 BC, but also possibly back to 10,000 BC or something like this, okay? So the bizarre part is that the same thing goes for the Sphinx, and which means, of course, it would predate the Egyptian civilizations as we know them. And that is problematic, of course, for anthropology, for archaeology, and so you get, there's these fights happening. And funny enough, I forgot where I was seeing this, but this is just a kind of a random memory that flashed while I'm talking about this right now. But there was a thing, I think I found it on Graham Hancock's website. I was kind of reading up on him. Maybe he posted it to Twitter or something, but Twitter X, sorry. Basically, he was saying that he tried to debate with that Zahi Hawass guy. You guys know the Egyptian antiquities guy. I've seen him in 100 TV shows. You've probably seen him in 100 TV shows. He's that guy, right? He's the guy that's like, aliens did not build the pyramids. And, he's Egyptian, and, he's got skin in the game, and he's been studying this stuff for years, and, all the rest. So he gets super pissed off when people say things like, well, what if this is quite a bit older than we think? He loses his mind, if you guys ever saw some of that. But anyway, Graham Hancock, I guess, was in the same room with the guy, and it turned into a big kerfuffle kerfuffle. And anyway, whatever. I think it's kind of funny that this type of stuff happens. And if you think somebody's full of crap, you don't have to listen to them, or you can listen, with kind of a grain of salt and a smile, the Cheshire Cat smile. I mean, anyway, so I digress there. But back to what we're talking about. So specifically now, the weirdness of this 10,000-year-old Sphinx, 10,500 years old, things like this, has many ramifications for, like I said, anthropology, archaeology. How would you combine the two? Anthropology, like I just tried to say. But what it also means is that the Egyptians, as we know them, aren't, let's say, the progenitor civilization, or one of them anyway, that there's going to be something that comes before them, okay? And so the weird part about that is, what would that group of people be? And we've talked about this in the past, and what it could have been, all the rest of this. But tonight, of course, you know me, I'm a weirdo. And so I was thinking in terms of, well, if there was a cult of the Sphinx, and the Sphinx supposedly in alternative circles goes back 10,500 years, well, then we have maybe the first human cult in existence, something to this effect, right? And let's just say it this flood, maybe not the previous flood, but okay. So this is what got me thinking. Okay, and so I looked into the Sphinx a little bit, and the worship of the flood, not the flood, but the worship of the Sphinx itself. And wildly, there is evidence, and this is archaeological evidence. This is back to the real world. There is evidence to suggest that in between the paws of the Sphinx itself on the Giza Plateau, that there is evidence of an ancient temple that sat between the two paws. And this I didn't know, is that the Sphinx itself apparently is a portal. It's a representation of the portal of knowledge, and those paws are some sort of you walk into them, into the temple that's between the two paws of the Sphinx, and it's some sort of initiation ritual, or entrance into forbidden knowledge, or whatever it is, right? However you want to call it, because we don't really know the most of this stuff regarding the cult of the Sphinx is speculation here. But so the questions I have for you guys tonight are as follows. Number one, do you believe the mainstream version of the Sphinx and the Giza Plateau, or are you more inclined to think like Graham Hancock and think that maybe this stuff, we are the species with amnesia, and this goes way, way, way back, like at least 10,500 years in regard to the Giza Plateau and the Sphinx and the rest? So that's the first question, the easy question. The second one is, if we have actual evidence of a cult here, which it seems like we do, the cult of the Sphinx, and a temple housed between the paws there, do you think that this is possibly the first human cult in modern times? And I say modern times by 10,000 years or whatever. The first human cult. And of course, because we're going to get super weird, because it is what we do on Troubled Minds. Beyond that, is it possible that such an old ancient cult like this still exists, passing along ancient wisdom in the form of riddles, or let's say allegory, or things like this? And it fits into a lot of things, because we talk about synchronicity on this show quite a bit, and where some of these cosmic, kind of puzzles come into play, and what are we dealing with as far as the nature of reality and things like this. But it got me wondering if some of those things are actually maybe used as I don't know, like just secrets or riddles. Like, of course, and one of the most famous thing, back to the riddles, is one of the most famous stories about the Sphinx is that it told the particular riddle in the tale of Oedipus. If you guys ever read the tale of Oedipus, who was destined to marry his mother and kill his father. And it's basically a story about fate. And it's he's born, let's see if I can remember the details here. I didn't read it before we started, but basically he was born, and they took him to the oracle, and the oracle said he was destined to marry his mother and kill his father. And they were horrified, and so they threw the baby out, knowing full well that this would come to pass, because the oracle at Delphi said it, and what the oracle says happens. But what ended up happening is they threw the baby out, expecting him to die in the wilderness and be eaten by the lions and tigers and bears, oh my. And he was found by a farmer out there, or something to that effect, a lumberjack, or somebody in the forest, just a good old-fashioned mountain man, let's say. And he picked up the baby and was like, well, this is weird. There's a baby out here crying in the forest. And of course, which set into motion a chain of events, which would lead Oedipus to grow up, which was this baby, all the way to adulthood and fulfill these prophecies. And so basically, just to boil down the story, it ends with the Sphinx. And the Sphinx, of course, was the Riddler, the great Riddler of the days of yore. And it used to sit outside the city of Thebes, is what the initial let's say, consensus of antiquity was, is that the Sphinx itself was a true flesh and blood creature that sat outside the city of Thebes. And what it would do is, to travelers passing by, it would posit a riddle, the riddle of the Sphinx, as we've heard, okay? And if you didn't answer the riddle, it would devour you. It would eat you, okay? It would literally just, on the spot, you're dead, devour you, eat you, okay? Now, we'll get to that riddle a little bit later, and we'll talk about it, because there's some interesting things there as well. But, okay, so that's the deal. And so it got me thinking in terms of not just sort of the larger context of, okay, ancient human cults. All right, now we're talking about not just the riddle of the Sphinx, which is probably the most famous supernatural riddler in human history. But then beyond that, what if we're dealing with, back to this script, this ancient script where this started tonight, with this sort of message inverted, and it was in plain text. They should have been able to decipher this, but they just realized it was a sort of a mirror image backwards sort of Da Vinci type script. And they were like, oh, wow. So it's basically ancient knowledge disguised and in plain sight. And of course, it got me wondering if this is still going on. And that's what I want to know. Main threat, what's up on over on Twitch? I see there a fantastic question. Is the Sphinx male or female? And the ancient Greeks depicted the Sphinx as a female, typically. The Egyptians had something called I think it's an androsphinx, which is actually a male-headed sphinx. So there's two different versions of this, the Greek version and the Egyptian version. But notice that both of these cultures held this entity, this supernatural entity, in high esteem, which again, it makes me go, what the hell's going on here? So anyway, so lots of things to think about tonight in terms of this. So is it possible then, back to the questions, one, is it possible that the actual Sphinx itself and the Giza, can I say it, on the, slow down, Mike, everything's going to be okay. On the Giza Plateau, is it possible that it's actually as old as 10,500 years old, as Graham Hancock suggests, or even older than that? And beyond that, if we have evidence to suggest a temple, not just a temple within the paws of the Sphinx itself, but also an ancient cult that worshiped this ancient critter, this ancient, basically it's a hybrid. That's how you would call it. Where's Alex Jones when you need him, right? Pound his fist, alien human hybrids or whatever he says, the Sphinxter. That's funny in the chat. Oh, yes, maybe we'll call it the Sphinxter tonight. But okay, so in any case, that's what's on my mind tonight. And so it got me thinking, of course, in all of these things, is there some sort of maybe modern script, maybe modern, meaning writing, or esoteric knowledge that was built out of all of these ancient cults that still exist today? Because that's exactly where my mind is at in regard to this. Because look, it does have sort of the idea anyway. It harkens back to the cult of Cthulhu. If you guys have ever read The Call of Cthulhu, where they were sort of this ancient group of people that they weren't ancient in terms of them themselves. They were human lifespans. But they were such a secret society that was working sort of in secret for a very long time to cast spells and to bring about the perfect space to bring Cthulhu back into the world, okay? Which Cthulhu, of course, was in the actual, in the ocean at that point. They were trying to wake Cthulhu up, okay? And so it got me thinking in terms of that. Like, basically, are we dealing with an ancient cult that's been here forever and is, let's say, worshiping something that's quite a bit obvious, more obvious in modern times if you consider the Sphinx as a I don't know, like a piece of architecture. Notice that there are massive statues of people. Notice there are massive obelisks, or these sort of pointy things. What do they call it? I think they're called obelisks. There's pyramids. There's all manner of things. Okay, but what we don't see in antiquity, at least that survived to this day, are these massive structures like this of chimeras, of actual hybrid entities. And so it makes me wonder if something else is at play here. So, like I said, no actual anything, just some heavy speculation, drinking the maybe juice tonight. But it did get me thinking in terms of these cults, and maybe these ancient scripts, writing, of course, are prevalent and around us all the time. I mean, we look at these QR codes, we look at some of this type of stuff that maybe elvish writing, from Tolkien, things like this. I do wonder if some of this stuff still exists and we're dealing with the same ideas from 10,000 years ago or further back, and maybe, just maybe, this cult itself still exists. What say you? Yay or nay? Somewhere in between? Of course, lots of questions that don't have to do with this cult, but is it possible that this Sphinx was built 10,500 plus years ago? If so, they let it get buried in the desert sands up to its neck and had to re-excavate it sometime in, I think it was the 1910s or something like this, maybe 1890s, can't remember exactly when. But then, what the hell is going on with this? How come we don't have more of these massive chimeras built, scattered across the deserts? Meaning, of course, in the old days, they used to believe, well, the Sphinx may have been real, at least by stories, mythologically, and in folklore. We can infer this from, of course, one of the most famous stories ever, the story about fate, and whether we actually have a true autonomy over our actions and control over our fate itself, which traces back to Oedipus, and it's known as the Oedipus complex, if you want to look into that, meaning that things could be preordained. And that seems to be the strange part to me, because there's a lot of really sort of, desyncing, displacements, this type of thing. Is something out of sync there in the chat, guys, on the video? Let me know. Maybe over on Twitch. I have no idea. Anyway, but the bizarre part is back to the Sphinx here. And there's a lot of mystery about this thing, and not just, again, through one of the most ancient stories, and that story of fate, and are we in control of our own destinies with the Oedipus complex and that bit, but also the story ends of Oedipus when after he ends up killing his father on the road somewhere. I forgot the exact circumstances. I believe Oedipus, a grown Oedipus now, I believe they were bandits or something, being accosted, and he jumped out and attacked and ended up killing several of them, including his own father. Turns out that now that his mother is widowed, Oedipus I'm talking about, now is sort of an outlaw of sorts, but also not, because some of the people didn't like the king, some of the people did, and this is just from memory, so if my details are foggy, you'll forgive me. But it turns out that now that his mother was widowed, because he had killed his own father, of course, the king and the queen, the queen was looking for a new suitor. And the Sphinx was eating the hell out of the population, because they just couldn't solve the Sphinx's riddle. And so they needed somebody to get rid of the Sphinx. And so Oedipus volunteered and went and actually discovered the riddle of the Sphinx, the answer anyway. And as a result, either two versions of this. One, the Sphinx went mad and jumped off of a cliff and killed itself. The other version is that it kind of went into a dizzy trance or something, and Oedipus was able to kill it. And, of course, the reward for getting rid of the Sphinx was the hand of the queen, and you get to become the king of the land. Well, in that case, Oedipus had now murdered his father and was given the hand of his mother in marriage. And all of that came about because they tried to get rid of the child in the forest, due to, specifically, the information coming from the Oracle at Delphi, meaning these things are not brought about, let's say, even if you try and avoid them, you end up running toward them no matter what. So pretty wild stuff to consider there. But I don't know. What do you think about this? And, of course, the idea of this cult of the Sphinx, because that was, to me, a little bit wild, because I'd never heard of it. Me, I read a lot of this weird stuff, and so mentioning it in the article there, links in the description, I kind of thought, I wonder, is this something that goes back quite a ways, and is it something we're still dealing with today?